Hey everybody, executive producer and host of the Break It Down show, Pete A. Turner, coming straight at you to tell you about who's going to be on your show today. A guy named Jason Van Kemp. And Jason has done a lot of things. He was a Green Beret in the Army and did world-class things there, obviously. But that's not where it stops. He also started a company called Mission 60. And at Mission 60, what they do is they take military expertise. They've got, Medal of Honor recipients. They've got guys like Nate Boyer, who said, I don't give a damn if I don't have a real football background. I'm going to go become a Division I player on the University of Texas. And John Macaskill. Both those guys have been on the show at least, well, I guess there's 3 episodes with Nate twice and John once. So grabbed a bunch of guys like that and said, how do we create optimization for teams and people? And basically they run people through a program. And it's just, they're absolutely a smash hit success. When you look at their list of clients, you think, why haven't we hired these guys yet? So you're going to love that part. He's also got a thing called Warrior Rising, where they take veteran entrepreneurs, or what we call vetrepreneurs, and they run them through a similar thing where they say, hey, this is how you start a company. This is who you should be talking to. This is how you talk to them. Here's what you need to prepare for. And basically they take these vetrepreneurs and accelerate them towards success through the techniques that they've proven. What is all this based on? Well, it's based on his concept, Jason's concept of pushing through discomfort. And I think he and I vibe on this heavily because I have a similar concept where a lot of times discomfort, I would say, is miscomfort. And so just because you don't understand why something feels a certain way doesn't mean that that thing is unattainable or unnatural. So we both look at this, looking at comfort and redefining how we do it. He would say you push through things that hurt. And I would say once you sit in with that hurt, you'll discover why it works for other people. So I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation as the two of us go back and forth on how we sort of see these things. It's a really great episode. It's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of people that have asked about having Jason on the show. And I know that you guys will also appreciate that as you finally get it here this episode. As always, there's a live version of the episode, and if you look in the show notes, you can click on that. You can also get Jason's book. And keep in mind, in general, when you buy things through Amazon, I'll put our link in there, but if you want to sign up for Audible or you want to give Audible as a gift to somebody, yes, that's a thing. Hey, go to breakitdownshow.com. I think the first 2 things you'll see are Amazon links. I love Audible. I think it's a great way to listen to books in your free time. I mean, listen to the Break It Down show, sure. But also, I listen to probably a book every 10 days. I'll finish a book through Audible. Keep in mind, I'm also reading other things. I read a lot, but the Audible thing's cool because once a month you get the free book with your subscription. So I probably consume 1 to 4 books in a month, depending on how much listening I have to do. I love it, and I wouldn't push it if I wasn't excited about it. So go to breakitdownshow.com, click on that link. That'd be a good way to support us. If you're going to get anything through Amazon, hey, click our link or ask me for a link. I'll send you one. All right, enough about that. Hey, Save the Brave, savethebrave.org. Go there, click on the donate tab, put a small amount of money in each month. My money comes out in a couple of days because that's the end of the month for me. You could set up a similar withdrawal, and that would be a big help to us. All right, one more thing to say to you. Here comes the incredible Jason Van Kemp.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
And now, the Break It Down Show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
Good to have you on the show, Jason. You're a fellow veteran, and, well, you've done a lot of impressive and incredible things. It's always, as someone who's out there trying to fight the fight, it's always good for you to hear this, that several people, disparate people don't know each other, all said, you got to have Jason on the show. Just to be completely honest, though I'm a veteran, I don't pursue a lot of veteran guests because I kind of get tired of putting the Letterman jacket on and talking about football stories and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so when I hear people say that, I'm like, I've got to make sure I got him on. And then I look you up and, wow, man, you are a busy dude. You are crushing it.
Well, I'm certainly happy that it appears that way, right? I'm definitely putting a lot of work in, burning the candle on both ends, and trying to serve other people, trying to provide for my family, trying to make a name in this world, and trying to be a good dude is basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, I have similar goals. I'm trying to be a good dude. I'm trying to relieve burdens of folks that are struggling to get rid of their own burden while simultaneously trying to get my own burden off my own back.
There you go.
We have a lot of similarities in our approach to things. I talk about the concept of miscomfort. And, that's more like, look, and you're an SF guy, so you know how this stuff works. Like when you work cross-culturally, you're not supposed to be comfortable with what you experience when you're in a new culture or working with somebody from a different political party or whatever it's going to be. You need to get into that miscomfort because that's where the growth is. And then that miscomfort can actually be like, you actually can crave that. You've done cross-cultural things. You understand that. But you also talk about the true discomfort of like pushing yourself through adversity. So let's talk about both of those concepts and how it helps people grow.
Yeah, Pete, fascinating. I want to hear more about real fast.
Yeah.
The miss in miscomfort. Can you explain what that means a little bit more?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're just using the prefix miss, it's like, it's not a comfort, it's not that it's discomfort. Yeah, it doesn't feel comfortable, but that discomfort can become comfortable. So it's just misaligned comfort. And so when you look, and again, you guys focus a lot on cross-cultural competency in the Green Beret community, but if you're unwilling to see cross-cultural differences, if you're unwilling to work with those problems, then it will always be discomfort. But I suggest that there are a lot of things that if you simply go out and do them, like for example, you have a powerful charitable charter. We'll talk about your charity in a few minutes. Scott Husing and I just drove across the nation and back.
Oh, cool.
Right? Trying to raise awareness, raise money, raise all that for veteran suicide to prevent it. And when you're on the road because he rode his motorcycle, I drove the chase truck. When you're under an underpass in the middle of Texas and it's 100 degrees outside, and you're both leaning over the truck, just going, damn, this is hard. That's when one of us has to say, hey, charity ain't supposed to be easy. We're fighting people's lives. And then all of a sudden you get real comfortable with that miscomfort and you think about what someone else has to get through to get there. And you realize this ain't that bad. I can get through this. This actually isn't even uncomfortable. It's actually pleasurable now that I understand why I'm doing it and where my motivations lie. That's sort of a basic breakdown of miscomfort, which I think again aligns directly with what you're trying to do too.
It does. I love how you said that. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to borrow that from
Please.
time to time. The miscomfort, misaligned comfort. Interesting. I'm going to give that a lot of thought because there's a lot of play with what we're doing at Mission 60. So very similar to what you just discussed, the deliberate discomfort, intentionally, voluntarily, deliberately choosing to put discomfort, placing yourself in an environment where you're going to be in a position where this is not something that you're used to. It's not normal, and you have to grow because of it. And that's what I believe. And it's a philosophy of stoicism, right? It's, preparing yourself in the winter for the battles in the summer. That's kind of the ideas that we're going after.
Let me challenge you a little bit on that because tier one guys, alphas of alphas, when we go out and do things, and I'm not a Green Beret, I'm not a SEAL, but I worked with you guys quite a bit as a counterintelligence agent. So I'd go out and I'd collect and I'd go do just the most dangerous things that you guys are doing too. So I'll speak from that combined experience of being, on the tip of the spear. Stoicism isn't enough, man. We can't steel ourselves and not worry about the external environment. We put ourselves, specifically us, we put ourselves in the external environment and seek to change other people's way of looking at and doing things. And it used to be on the side of a mountain in Afghanistan doing the FID mission. But now today, night and how we're having huge conversations about how to improve the lives of Americans with the candidates that we have. And that's not a true stoic fight because you have to be part of it. We have to be, from my point of view, you have to be gathering people in the middle. Finding problems we all can march together around one step at a time. Maybe one step and have a fist fight and then reorient and march again. But that defies the stoic, as I understand it, the stoic belief. How do we be stoic, but also in that environment to create the change that we're trying to create?
Well, there's truth in stoicism, right? And I think what you're getting after is we need to take action. So we can't just be moderate in everything, right? And that's sort of the philosophy of the Stoics. We have to actually do something about it. We have to take action. We have to go out and perform and take that first uncomfortable step, whatever it might be in your life. And certainly, as you discussed, there's a lot going on in our country right now, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Yes. Right? All the different riots and the movements and the protests and all the discussions that we have politically charged, President Trump versus, Biden, the whole thing, it's coronavirus. The whole thing is crazy right now in our country. And I believe, as you do, if I understand you correctly, that we actually need to go out and do something about it. We need to stand up and fight for what we believe in, whatever it might be. And that's what makes our country great, is that diversity of thinking. And as long as we're listening to each other, right? As long as I'm saying, listen, Pete, I might not agree with you 100%, but I understand what you're saying. And here's what I'm saying. And you say, Jason, I'm listening to you, understand what you're saying. We can build on that and we can do great things. And that's what I've been trying to tell our people is don't just read the headline of an article and make a judgment because of that. Read the entire article, look at some other articles, talk to your friends, talk to the people you trust, think about it, and then make a judgment call. And I don't think we're doing that really as a country right now. We're just getting fired up, the conservatives by watching Fox News, the liberals by watching CNN, and then we're in the arena together, battling it out like gladiators. Yeah. It's not how it should be, right?
I mean, look, I'll speak for us from our combined experience. We've seen how that goes. We've been several years down the line when a country goes that route. And at some point, if we're not going to, Ben Franklin said this a couple hundred years ago, united we stand, divided we fall. And if we refuse to be united about something, then I would say that's where the very uncomfortable work is. It ain't fun to be in the middle. It's comfortable to take a side and be like, I know they're all wrong over there, but be in the middle, say, hey, everybody, chill out. Let's talk. Let's powwow. And let's find the thing that hurts us both the most that we can agree on, and then work there.
That's a great way of looking at it. I think if you're in the silent majority, and I feel like I'm in the silent majority in a lot of ways, there comes a point where you have to take action because I think about World War II in Germany, just prior to, the Nazis taking over. I read that a philosopher there said, I watched as 1/3 of the country killed another third of the country while the remaining third just sat back, watched, and did nothing. Right. So I think that 1/3 that sat back and watched and did nothing, I don't think we should or could ever get to that point. I mean, if you're in that boat, there comes a point where you need to step up and take action. And I think that's what we're trying to inspire people to do.
Yeah. There's a long pause there because there's a lot in that statement. And I totally agree. Our ability to deal with these things, it's really challenging. I do, just for the audience's sake, I'm going to put up a link here and just mention this. Chris Long interviewed you on his show. Chris Long's a former NFL player, has a huge heart, won the humanitarian award in the NFL several times, I think, and does a lot of work with veterans. And so he did such a great job interviewing you, talking about your background in West Point. I like to kind of use that as a part one and really dive into some of the meat of what you're doing because it's important. And let's, I try to not ask the same questions that have already been asked on the other show. So
I love that. Thank you, man. I don't want to regurgitate, I hear what you're saying. Ask me some fresh new material like you are right now. This is interesting.
Yeah. Well, because look, these are challenging times. And let me tell you in part where I get some of this tasking from is, we had Sebastian Younger on the show several years ago, and it was back in the era when he was talking about tribe. And he said, you guys have served overseas enough. Come home and rally us in the middle, figure out how we're going to go forward. And he didn't say as a Democrat, as a Republican, he didn't define a vision other than to say, get us to get along. And first off, damn, that's a hell of a tasking.
Yeah.
But he's right. He's right. Like we have to figure out how to get past this. And if our today, we know what our prime political choices are going to be for president and vice president. If these are the choices that we're going to get, this is really more than ever up to us all to work on this.
It is. And I love the shout out to Sebastian. I'm a huge fan. The guy is a rock star, man. Tribe. I mean, that's what a book.
Yeah.
and everything else he's done with his life. So we've got to listen to each other, really listen to each other, not wait for the other person to stop talking so you can say what you want to say, but actually sitting back and listening to this person, whoever it might be, even though you might disagree wholeheartedly. When I earned my Green Beret and I walked into my boss's office for the first time, my company commander's office, he sat me down and kind of told me his leadership philosophies. And he said, Jason, if you're going to succeed here, it's because of your ability to listen. The difference between being a good Green Beret and a great Green Beret is your ability to listen. Now sit back and listen to what I'm telling you right now. And I took that to heart. And you mentioned a few times going to Afghanistan, Iraq, overseas, different countries. It never was me walking into, conducting foreign internal defense into a foreign counterpart's office or what have you and saying, this is how it's going to be. It was always me walking in there, building rapport and saying, okay, well, tell me about yourself. Tell me about what's going on right now. Talk to me about your problems and just listening, not interrupting, not stopping them short, not saying, well, this is an easy fix. Just listening to them talk. And that's really something that we don't do a good job of right now in our country. I think maybe at some point in the past, we did do that very, very well. At least understanding history and being a big fan of history, I feel like we did that at one point, but right now we're not. I don't get it.
Yeah. That listening aspect, that was vital. I mean, that was how I was able to give, you guys the intel that you needed, because my job wasn't to go out, and turns out my job was not to go out and tell you the things that you already knew, and as an officer and as a commander, my job is to tell you how to win. And when I go out with a packet of enablers and we're inoculating goats, the goat inoculators are going to say, hey, we won today. And I'm going to go out and I'm going to say, hey, and I'll make you a Colonel Van Camp. I went around, I talked to the farmers and asked them what happened today. And they said that the Americans inoculated the sheep and we're glad for it. And then I asked, well, what about the government here that we're trying to legitimize and stand up? And then they laughed in my face. You as a commander would be desperate to know that. You want to hear from those people on the ground who you're trying to improve their condition. But if we refuse to understand the condition of the people that we're trying to help, we are unable to help them.
Beautifully said. That's poetic, Pete. I appreciate that.
Thanks, man.
It is. I mean, it is. If you really think about it and you kind of digest that and marinate out that's what it comes down to. That's really what it comes down to, is not just self-awareness, but social awareness and knowing the people around you and knowing how they think and how they feel and what their thoughts are. Because if you've ever been to a foreign country, and served in combat, you realize it's hard to explain to your friends back home that have never served before what that is like, what that mindset is like. Because just for example, freedom, it seems so simple to us. Like we understand it, we feel it, we live it. But to explain what freedom is to people over there, the majority, for the most part, it's just such a foreign concept to them. It just doesn't register. Just for example.
When you look at that mission overseas, because a lot of folks think about combat and they know what they know from movies. You and I both know. And here, I'll ask you the question that I ask all my operator friends. In combat, and you're going to love this, did you fire more bullets or have more conversations?
Oh, not even close.
Right.
Conversations, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to ask me what the most realistic war movie of all time is, then I'll tell you, without hesitation, it's Tropic Thunder, man. That was the most real depiction of combat that there is in Hollywood.
That's hilarious.
We certainly had more conversations than bullets. No question. That's no question.
Now, this one, I don't know how you answer this one, because this one gets a little more variable. Where did we spend the bulk of our focus and time pre-combat deployment?
For us in the Special Forces, it was a lot of understanding our area of operations, our area of interest, understanding, talking about intelligence, getting briefings on that sort of thing. I speak fluent Russian. That was my language in the Special Forces. And I lived in Russia for 2 years. So At one point I was fluent. Right now I'm pretty good, but it's been a long time. Took it upon myself to learn Arabic. Mm-hmm. And I could speak it well enough to have, just small talk in the beginning of the conversations. And then when we were having a discussion, certainly I'd have my interpreter there as well, but I would pick up, words and understand kind of what we're talking about, what the conversation is going towards. Because you're only as good as your interpreter, really, is what it comes down to when you're in combat. Mm-hmm. And certainly, and by saying this, I'm agreeing with you, but I don't want to discount the fact that we also did a whole lot of training with CQB and ambush and raid, and all the the combat, the physical training as well.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons why I asked that follow-up question, because when you work with conventional units, and I'm not saying anything derogatory about these guys, but if you go to NTC pre-deployment and you're firing artillery pieces pre-deployment for Afghanistan or Iraq, and that's not going to be your job. Maybe a couple of teams that you have to train specifically to do a few missions. And I've got a lot of time in Iraq. I mean, I know how often long guns are shot. Sure. It ain't very often. They're put at even more of a disadvantage because they don't have the time. You're not sending any more than, I don't know, if 10 people to go do immersion language training in a regular unit. It just doesn't happen. And then the other thing that is true 100% is there is no specific advanced level interpreter operations training. There's no interpreter driving badge, none of that. You have to invent that yourself, which is crazy for an institution that relies so heavily on interpreters. If you cannot build trust with your interpreter, then you should find a new interpreter or find a new job, because they're half you and half your partner, the person you're talking to. And how in the world can you do this work if you can't talk? And because we focus, and rightfully so, we focus on the combat issues that we have to deal with, because you have to be prepared there first. The vital mission of listening and sorting through and understanding, it doesn't get quite familiarization fire for the audience. It doesn't quite get tertiary level attention, but it doesn't get the attention that it requires to do that super deliberate and hard, challenging work.
You're absolutely 100% correct on that. I'll tell you, when I lived in Russia and I started getting good at speaking Russian, I started spending some time with professional interpreters, right? Speaking, translating Russian to English and back and forth and so forth, vice versa. And I would tell right away, like pretty quickly, like this guy sucks. Like he can't speak Russian. He can't speak English, like he's not very good at all. Mm-hmm. And when they were trying to interpret, I was like, he's missing the message. He doesn't understand what this guy's trying to say. And the way he's delivering it is super confusing. And that's why nothing's being accomplished right now is because the interpreter, his skill level is poor. And that's why nothing's getting done. And so I was really cognizant of that in Iraq, and tried to make sure that the guys that I worked with, the interpreters, they understood me, they understood my vibe, they understood like the subtle details, the body language, everything else that was going on with me, so they could speak it. And also I feel like a lot of times people don't know how to utilize interpreters correctly. They'll spit out paragraph after paragraph after paragraph and then just say, translate. And if you're an interpreter, you're like, I can't remember. I didn't memorize 3 paragraphs worth of stuff. Give me a sentence or two so I can literally translate what you're saying, not just kind of summarize what I feel like the gist of what you wanted to do is, and then interpret that, And so we don't get much or any training with dealing with how to effectively use an interpreter overseas. And I think that possibly the media kind of serves as an interpreter for us as well. And we as the citizens, as people, we don't get enough training or knowledge about how to interpret the effectiveness of our interpreters, our translators, the CNNs, the Fox Newses, and so forth.
Yeah, no, it's a good point and a fair transition. If I'll let you have it, I do want to kind of sit in this moment a little more though with the interpreter, because there is somewhere I'm going with this.
Okay.
And when we think about the kind of help that you try to provide and that we've been experienced through, that's why I'm spending time here in this part. in terms of interpreters, when we look at what they have to do, it's the one tool that we have that's as vital as anything else that we never pre-brief. We're never taught to take an interpreter, sit down and say, look, here's what we're going to do. Here's the conversation we're going to have. And we know this conversation probably won't happen word for word, but here are the things I'm always looking for here. So that they can we're asking them to do this in a moment with no preparation. We might do a sand table practice drill or something like that, but we never take the time to back brief, to pre-brief, any of those things with our interpreter, and we're fools for it. So I know you agree because I see you're nodding your head. So let's take all of these.
100% agree.
Yeah, let's take all of this to understand, to listen, and now let's apply that to the work that you're doing. And I guess we'll start with Mission 60, because the reason why I bring this granular detail is because what we do is pro shit. I mean, it's easy to say go do combat, but when you get there and you realize I need to know how to talk to people. I need to know how to talk to my interpreter. Wait, I need to know how to operate an interpreter. Like, these are levels that are so far beyond, the standard person who comes to you. We're bringing these lessons, I'm assuming, with the ground 60 mission. So talk a little bit about that, and then how these very specific skills translate to someone who doesn't have them.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. So the background of Mission 60 is I was getting my MBA, and they gave us an opportunity to start our own businesses and compete against other students there. And I thought to myself, well, if I'm going to start a business, I want to start something that I'm knowledgeable about and I'm passionate about. So I was really knowledgeable about leadership. I mean, a West Point guy, spent my entire life up to that point in the military, Ranger, Green Beret, going to combat, the whole thing. And I was really passionate about the people that I worked with, that I served with, some of my former commanders, some of my former subordinates, my peers, guys that I just wanted to put into a room and then just have my children go into that room and soak up everything that they are. Just basically go one by one. Clay, let me learn all of your life experience. Okay, now Brian, let me learn all of your life experience. Now Rebecca, and just kind of go through the people in this room. And I just thought that would be powerful. So I got together with those people and I said, I've got an idea. This is the idea. It's a leadership development company. Are you in? And most of them said, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. And so they just kind of trusted me to lead the way. And, being a young business guy, I didn't know what I was doing. And so I started cold calling NFL teams as our first clients, because I figured I played football in college, and I love football and I love watching football. And I feel like these teams could really get a lot of benefit and value out of our leadership philosophies, because you see it time and time again, the communication problems, the dysfunction, the culture issues, and it compounds into losses. And when you're playing sports, the thing that I love about it is the simplicity of it. There are wins and there are losses, right? And in life, it's not that black and white. Right? It's a lot more gray than walking off the field knowing that you won that game. And so we attacked this professional sports arena, and we became pretty successful pretty quickly with that. And obviously now we work with a lot of mostly corporate clients. Specifically this year, all the COVID has destroyed all that vertical for us. I mean, all the contracts are postponed or canceled this year, and obviously with good reason. I'm not going to argue that. And so we help people become better versions of themselves. And we do that by kind of introducing what we call a total warrior model. It's very similar to a whole person concept. And so we look at somebody being self-aware, socially aware, and professionally aware in the mental, physical, spiritual, social, emotional, and professional domains. So I look at a person through that lens, and then we help them become the best version of themselves, best leader that they could be. And then we do that through the philosophy, the mindset of deliberate discomfort. So voluntarily choosing to put yourself in an uncomfortable position so you can grow and improve and become stronger.
Through a lot of trial and adversity and lots of errors, either observed that the institution did or that I've done myself, and so many times the same thing, I developed a couple of cultural lenses, not quite tools, but they're a little more than lenses. But one of them is as a leader, when you have certain values reflected back to you. Yeah, in my case, it was incompetence, corruption, or passive aggressive behavior. When those things are reflected back, that should trigger in your brain that you have a cultural problem. And the basic way to get to the right quadrant of cultural collaboration, at least by my study, is if you understand the decision-making process and the goals of the person or institution or the culture that you're trying to engage with, and vice versa. If they understand your decision-making and your goals, now you have a chance to be collaborative. It's still deliberate, challenging, maddening work, but that level of cultural capacity, that acuity, everybody talks about emotional intelligence, right? It's hard to be emotionally intelligent if your CQ is low and you refuse to understand, a leader that's like, no, we all have the same goal, is not going to be a good leader, because they don't understand that my goals are come to work, give you the 8 hours I promised I would give you. And then I got to go take care of my daughter, go through a divorce and whatever, work on my dream. If you don't understand that, then you're going to struggle as a leader because you're not listening. Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it. If you don't understand that, then you're going to struggle as a leader because you're not listening.
Correct. Yeah, you have to understand who the person is before you can buy into that person. And that goes both ways. Asking them questions, not being afraid to do so, and taking ownership and accountability of things when they don't go right. Right. So I'll give you a couple examples, and they might be long-winded. So I tell this story every now and again. That's super often. Both of these stories I don't tell a whole lot, but we were working with the Jets, New York Jets, NFL's New York Jets, and their left guard at the time was named Matt Slauson. Great dude. He's since retired. This was like 9 years ago, and we took them through an event to kind of change their mindset, to shake up their psyche a little bit. And after it was over, I was talking to Matt about the event and what his thoughts were. Does he have any feedback? What did he learn? He said, I learned a lot, but the thing that really impacted me the most was just communication. I was like, well, what do you mean? And he said, you see that guy over there? And he pointed across this small dirt road, and was a guy over there named Jeff Cumberland. He was a tight end for the Jets. And Matt's like, yeah, that's Jeff Cumberland. And I said, okay. And he said, we've been on the same team for about 5 years now. And the first time I've ever said a word to him was 5 minutes ago.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, man, like, you're a guard, he's a tight end. You virtually play next to each other on offense. You've been on the same team for 5 years. And I left a meeting earlier today where the head coach and the coaching staff, you guys were all getting fired up about this event and the preseason, and talking about how you were all a family and you're brothers and you fight for the man to your left and to your right. Like, how are you going to fight for that guy if you don't even know who that guy is? If you never even really had an intimate conversation with the guy, beyond small talk, how you doing? Good. Nice weather or whatever. And he's like, yeah. So we brought Jeff and Matt together, and we, started a relationship with them, and they started communicating a lot more. And because of that, Jeff felt more comfortable in the offense, more comfortable on the team. And he had a career year that year. I mean, he had 5 times more touchdowns than he did previously in any other year. He had, career year for receiving yards and the whole thing as a tight end. And I thought that was just fascinating. And just a lesson learned about communication and getting to know the person on your team, really getting to know that person. And so we train our clients in communicating more effectively and really establishing, this open line of communication and getting to know each other on a more intimate level. And oftentimes that has to occur outside of the workplace in order for it to be effective.
It strikes me that so in part 1 of our show, when Chris Long was talking to you, you were talking about, I believe it was in selection. And for the audience, selection is 3 weeks of staying awake and working out and doing impossible shit. And if you make it through that, then they're like, hey, now you can go to the Q course and become a Green Beret after a couple of years. So It's the first challenging step to weed things out. And it's not just physical toughness. They measure your personality and all these things, right? And so when the military trains you at a course, this is again for the audience, but when the military trains you at Ranger School, it's a leadership school, it doesn't seem like it seems like you're going to, rappel down hills and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, sure, you do a lot of different military tasks, but it's a leadership skill. You were talking in selection that you would pick your head up during the impossible task and look around at your peers and say, yeah, we're doing this together. And in effect, communicating with your eyes and your emotions. But as a leader, it's very easy to be the guy next to you on the log or in front of you or behind you who are giving all they can and don't believe that they can take that moment to look up and look around and see that you are struggling together and find that extra energy that comes from, because humans are pack animals. How do you communicate that to a leader who's like, I've never failed at anything. I would like to continue to get bigger. I've never ran a corporation this big, and that's true every day. My company gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but I have to get better. How do you communicate with someone that's never been wrong, never failed, these principles of you can't just have your head down?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we deal with a lot of these individuals, a lot of them. And first off, are they open to learning? Are they open to getting better? And the vast majority of them are. Now it's getting to know this person and finding out how they accept learning, how they communicate. And once we figured that out, and like you said, it's different for every single person.
Right.
We say, all right, now let's humble this person, because clearly at some point in his life, he or she has been humbled and they don't like it, or they learn from it, or they needed more of it in their life right now. And so we put them through a scenario where they are humbled, where they are wrong, right? Where their decisions, every decision they make is the wrong decision, and we don't tell them that. We have them come to that own realization, that own epiphany on their own. Like in selection, we went through something called the situational awareness reaction exercise, where you bring all these type A, personalities, never failed in their lives, going to be a Green Beret, and you put them through the psychological examination where they're specifically, they've been conditioned so that this whole program has been created so that they do fail again and again and again and again and again. And you have a psychologist that walks through this half-day scenario with you and just records everything that you do, everything you see. And really what you're learning is, no matter how many times you fall down, you pick yourself back up, and you don't let it affect your performance, and you just move forward with it. And so for a lot of these CEOs, a lot of these people, we try to get them in a state of humility, so where they're receptive to learning. And then we just shotgun blast them with just as much valuable, powerful information as we can, from instructors that have been there, that have done that. And a lot of times they need to hear from a vet who's a wounded warrior, a guy who's a triple amputee, to say, listen, you think you got it tough? Well, here's my story. And guess what? I get up every single day and here's what I'm doing with my life. Oh, you think you're such a badass? Well, listen to this guy's story. And so when you hear these different stories from these different people, and you realize like, hey, maybe I did an Ironman once and that was tough, and I'm badass. Well, I got a guy on my team that did 50 Ironman races in 50 consecutive days in all 50 states. So how tough do you think you are by doing one Ironman, which is tough?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say anything negative about doing an Ironman. It's very difficult. But if you got a guy sitting here that's like, I did that and then some 50 days in a row.
Yeah.
You still think you're the toughest dude out here?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's how you really get into their psyche, and you really you plant those seeds of inspiration.
So you're tough, but are you tough enough? Are you tough enough to continue to grow, or whatever it is?
Yeah. And you know what, Pete, some guys are just so full of themselves. The ego is through the roof, unwarranted arrogance, and they don't want to listen. And that's okay, because at some point in their life, they're going to be forced to listen, because you have to choose hard things, or hard things are going to choose you.
Yeah.
And so those people, I mean, the end is coming. Like, let me tell you, like, you're going to get humbled, like it's going to happen soon if you don't do it yourself. And And for the vast majority of guys, even though they come across sometimes as arrogant, egotistical, that's okay, because I love breaking them down.
Yeah.
I look at it as a challenge, and honestly, it doesn't take that long. It really doesn't.
Yeah, it's funny. You're right. Like if you haven't reckoned with your ego, your 40s usually will sort that for you, because there's a big transition. And I don't know a 50-year-old who's been through their 50s who hasn't had a significant life scare. Like there's always something waiting for you that you have to be prepared for. And ego is a big problem. I remember watching the State Department folks. They're horrible at this. Their job is to partner with people, and I would watch them engage from a position of arrogance, and I would just shake my head like, what the heck is going on? And then I had the luxury of going back and talking to both people after these engagements. So I would go talk to that mullah, that sheikh, that governor, and see what was going on. Because imagine this coming to a commander, like, okay, there was a meeting today with the State Department and the governor that you're trying to create capacity with. And, here is what these guys said during the meeting, and here's what they both said afterwards. It's a game changer for a leader to have that kind of insight. But what all leaders of anything big, what they all need that they can't get is ground truth. The minute that Colonel Van Camp shows up, you are the most important, powerful person in that region, until you refuse to be. And you're like, no, it's the governor. He's the boss. I'm the enabler. Until we get leaders to that point, you run the risk of ego and your influence destroying your success. Is that fair?
Oh, very fair. Very fair. It's the same in business. Warrior Rising, my nonprofit, we help veterans start their own businesses. And I try to be very clear with the guys up front, like, listen, we're a tool to help you succeed. Whether or not you succeed or fail, it's on you. It's on your shoulders, right? You can take the success and you can take the failure. Don't blame us. Don't blame the tools for the poor job. Blame the carpenter. Essentially is kind of where I'm at, is taking more accountability and ownership for your performance. And yeah, this is beautiful, man. I love the conversation.
Good, man. I appreciate it. It turns out we all get along. Here's when I figured out that, and I was one of those guys that almost always went into the special operations, but deployments and commands and I had a good job already. It's kind of hard to transition. Like when you're already a spy, you're like, I have a really cool job. Like I could go fly helicopters, but would that be better? But when I was able to work with you guys, and you know how this goes, I would get vetted in a couple of ways. One of them was a murder board, and it's terrifying sitting across a bunch of people that have more time on the ground than you do. And they're like, all right, let's talk about collection operations. But when you get through that and there's not a peep, there's no question, you're like, oh, I just smoked this thing. Like no one tore me apart. But then when you go out to the bar afterwards and you focus on getting them laid, because that's what a good spy should do, then you're in, right? And so it was never about being the alpha of the alphas. It was about being as helpful as I could with my specific capacity. I want to ask you, like, within an organization, you can be a leader on a staff. You can pull your part of the sled harder. You're on a football team. I mean, how many leaders are on the field in that? Like there aren't that many people following anything, and yet you're all under a led organizational plan. So how do you take folks who aren't in traditional leader roles, who are absolutely leading that part of the fight, and get them to unlock what they're doing?
A lot of times that's the issue at many corporations. They say, who are my true leaders? Who are the guys that I can count on in the fourth quarter? Who are the guys that are going to be there for me when the chips are down, when things are tough? And who are the guys that I should promote? Because I have a feeling that I understand the pulse of the locker room, the pulse of the organization, but maybe I don't. And I'd like to see your perspective from a fresh set of eyes. Like, what do you think? Who are the leaders here? Who has potential here? And we do a lot of that. And when we provide that information, that feedback, that data to our clients, they're more oftentimes than not, they're surprised. They're like, wow, I didn't think this guy had it in him, or this girl really kind of was like that. Well, it comes back down to what we talked about before. It's getting to know your people. And certainly there are quiet leaders and quiet professionals that, given the opportunity, they're going to stand up and they're going to do an amazing job. And it's tough to kind of gauge that when they're quiet a lot of the times, and that's okay. And so, like it's just fascinating to understand, unlock the power of human potential.
Yeah.
I don't think you're born necessarily with leadership. I think it's developed over time and through experience. Some guys are forced into a leadership role, and granted, they're maybe not that great at first, but then they grow into it. They learn. They suffer at first. It's uncomfortable at first, but then they get pretty good at it and they learn from it. And I think I had a certain type of leadership skill. And I felt pretty confident about my leadership skills. But then when I went to the Army, I was like, man, I don't know anything, and then I started learning a lot, so much. I learned at Ranger School just, during those 3 months, like, this is what hard work looks like. This is what a leader does, and then thinking, okay, I'm good. I'm solid. And then going to special forces and realizing, man, I didn't know anything, like, this is really what it's about. And then going to combat and then, realizing like, well, it's a different type of leadership over here that I need to be utilizing. So all of them are tools that you put in your toolkit, and you got to understand which leadership skill to use at which time in order to be effective. You can't just use a hammer, as a tool for everything that you're trying to do around the house, or a screwdriver. I mean, there's a specific tool for a specific time and a specific purpose.
I use a hammer for everything. I shave with the hammer.
I do too, man. my 1-year-old son does right now too.
How about parenting? There's a thing where the hammer is the easiest tool to grab, and quite often the wrong tool. Like, if you want to get it wrong, parent as a hammer. My brother is a hammer. He's a Marine, and he's like, I'll punish harder, or I'll punish harder, or still. It's like, come on, dude, find a different hammer. One of the things that I would try to impart upon my military partner or my State Department partner that I'm working with is, when they're working with their partner, to ask them questions to kind of test their head up from the log PT situation. And I would say something like, hey, Jason, what was the last thing that your partner got right? Or what was the last thing you learned from your partner? And did you let them know? And, it was an arrogance test. It was a humble test. It was like, are they learning something from somebody? Or are they just like, I will direct this conversation, and they just pushing things and just being, is your partner passive aggressive? Yes. Okay, good. When was the last time you asked to set a meeting with them, or did you just show up unannounced? And the light goes on. You're like, oh, you know what? I never asked him once for a meeting. I just always showed up with my gun and my gang, and I took up his whole fucking day. Okay. These lessons, man, they're huge. And I know you guys must pass these things on to your people, because it's tremendously valuable to have the CEO say, you know what I learned from Jason the other day? He made me realize something. And you say that in a meeting, and Jason's gonna be like, wait, what? I did something? I got something right? When was the last time you told your staff that they did something good, or that you learned from them? It's so powerful. Oh,
so powerful. Recognition and reward. They're real, and some people really respond to recognition and reward. I mean, really, love and fear is what you use to motivate people, right? And so if your people believe that and they know, not just believe, like they know that you love them, you care about them, and you place them and their needs above your own, I mean, they'll do anything for you. My
friend Mary, who's one of my favorite people, always comments on the show, and I never get to her questions, but I think this is a powerful question. The quiet ones, the ones that are afraid to speak out, how hard do you work to bring them out, to challenge them, or do you let them kind of have their shell and their protection?
I don't force them to do anything that they don't want to do. So the way that I look at it is like this. I'll have clients or employees say, Jason, just motivate me. I just need you to motivate me. And I'll say, listen, I can't motivate you, and I'm not going to motivate you. I can only inspire you to motivate yourself, because I'm not going to be there 24/7. I'm not going to hold your hand. You're going to have to find whatever it is inside of you to move forward, because that's the epiphany. That's how you're going to succeed in life. Like if you're relying on me to do the work for you, then look somewhere else, because I'm not going to do the work for you. But if I can educate you and provide you the tools to do it, then awesome. So the quiet ones, that Mary is referring to, I'll put them in the best possible position to stand up and say something and do something and be a leader. I mean, the spotlight's going to be on them for a minute or two or however long it's going to be. And it's like, this is your opportunity. This is your moment of glory. Now is the time to seize it. And if they don't, I say, okay, well, let's, not going to embarrass that person, not going to call them out, not going to say anything, negative or punish or anything like that. Just say, okay, well, hopefully in the future, when you get a similar opportunity, you'll feel inspired enough or self-motivated enough to stand up and be that person that you could be. But right now is just not the moment for you.
The patience to wait for your moment and the preparation to seize that moment. Those things are powerful tools for sure.
Yeah.
There are, I don't know, people in 90 different countries that listen to this show, either the live form or the podcast form. And what you do works in any of those countries. So I guess just give us the 90-second pitch on your guys' mission in a time of COVID, because you're right. You're not just going to do a workshop. That's not going to happen. So how have you guys transitioned, and that person who hires training for their company, what do they need to hear from you?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And certainly COVID's been difficult for us because prior to COVID, we did a lot of live keynotes. Me and all the guys on my team, Medal of Honor guys on my team, amazing presenters. We did live workshops. So building off of the keynote presentations, we had scientists, PhDs, researchers, experts. They would come in and would say, all right, here's the scientific theory behind what this veteran just spoke about, his experiences. And then we did custom programs like corporate retreats, team building activities, in person, live. And so COVID, for us, it was like, all right, we have all of our contracts canceled or postponed this year. All of our clients are terrified, right? Let's just take a moment to pivot and figure out how we can survive in this new reality, this new normal. So we realized pretty quickly that we needed to do more online training. So we obviously have our book, Deliberate Discomfort. It's available on hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. I'm actually giving it away for free right now. All you have to do is pay for shipping if you go to deliberatenediscomfort.com. And then we said, all right, well, let's take all the lessons in the book and let's turn it into a master class. So we said every chapter in the book, 12 chapters, we'll break it down to 6 or so 10, 15-minute videos with the veterans and the scientists in that chapter, talking very intimately in depth about the lessons learned there. And we sell this master class as well. And then we said, all right, what more can we do? And we said, well, we can do virtual keynotes. We can do virtual workshops. We can do executive coaching. So that's sort of what we do right now. And it's been a blast. We're as of the last 2 months, we finally got to a point where we're profitable again this year, which is really exciting. And then we spend a lot of money on our marketing right now to get the word out, to let people know that we're thriving. We want to help. We can help, especially, when you're asking yourself questions like, how am I going to continue running my business? How am I going to survive? How am I going to put food on the table for my family? We've got answers. We work with a lot of clients that have come up with really creative, innovative solutions that we've helped them, develop, and we can provide that same level of assistance to you individually or as a business.
You talked about a Medal of Honor winner on your staff. I'm assuming that's Leroy Petrie. And for those that don't know, Leroy got into a firefight with a bunch of his Ranger friends, and someone threw a grenade at them. Leroy grabbed it and threw it back, basically. And it basically takes off his arm in the process. But when you look at something like that, and then that, from what I understand of the story, that emboldens that team that was in a really bad situation, and they pushed through. In part, that in that very inspirational leadership moment that, he sacrificed his life, ultimately lives, but he made that life and death choice and said, I'll sacrifice myself for you guys. And then it leads to them getting out of a dire situation. Is it possible to train for? I mean, look, we all think about that Medal of Honor moment. Would I dive on the grenade? Would I stand next to this tree and sacrifice my life so that the rest of the squad could get out of there? But is that something you can actually train for in business? Does that apply?
It does. It does. So Leroy is an absolute stud, like you said. The guy was fighting the Taliban in Afghanistan. A grenade was thrown into his trench. He picked it up, threw it, blew his entire arm off. He calmly took a tourniquet off of his kit, stopped the bleeding on his right arm, picked his weapon back up with his left arm, continued fighting, defeated the Taliban, got his guys to safety who had just saved their lives from the grenade. He got them to a helicopter. And so the way that I look at it is like this, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future, right? The people that you're around, you become like them. So for me, and we have another Medal of Honor recipient on our team. He's actually the president of the company. His name's Flo Groberg. He tackled a suicide bomber in Afghanistan and earned the Medal of Honor as well. And so for me, like, being around these guys, listening to their stories, understanding their mindset, feeling like we're close and we're friends, which we are, like, I sort of think to myself, this is who I want to become. These are the actions that I want to emulate. And that's why I wrote Deliberate Discomfort, is to tell these stories, to tell people that you can become like these guys, not just listening to the stories, but being around them, really absorbing their essence, like who they are. Like previously, I'll just give you an example, like going to combat before, if I had been blown up and lost my legs or arms or whatever, it would have been devastating to me mentally. I don't know if I would have been able to overcome it. Now, being mentally stronger now and knowing guys that are friends of mine that are, amputees, double amputees, triple amputees, seeing how they've overcome this adversity, seeing how they've lived their lives, knowing them, intimately, really close friends with these guys. If I'd been blown up now after having met these guys, I would not have been as devastated. I'm like, listen, okay, well, I lost my legs. This sucks. But you know what? Joey and Brian and Tommy and Mike and all these guys lost their legs too. Like, they're all my buddies. Like, it'll be fine. I'll get over it. You know what I mean? But not to, lessen that impact or discredit that experience, because it's, catastrophic for sure. But the same thing with Leroy. Like, if I were in combat and a grenade was thrown into my trench, would I have picked it up and thrown it out to save the lives of my guys? Would I have jumped on that grenade, or would I have tried to jump away with my guys? I don't know what I would have done in that scenario. However, now knowing Leroy and Flo and knowing what they've done, would I do that now? Yeah, they've shown me the way, man. Show me your friends and I'll show you your future. That's something that I probably would do at this point in my life, because they're my friends and those are the decisions that they made, and I trust them and I believe in them. I look up to them. And that's what Mission 60 is all about, is teaching people, showing people, building that rapport, those relationships with people, and communicating better, building that culture so you can do those things in the future, figuratively and literally.
We had Trent Gibson on. He was Jason Dunham's commander. Jason Dunham was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. He jumped on a grenade. He took his Kevlar off, threw it over the grenade, threw his body over it, and left a leadership problem for Trent, because right before it happened, Corporal Dunham was writing out his mission order and doing all his leadership stuff. And as a company commander, Trent's looking at Dunham going, man, that's leadership right there. His guys brought him food so that he could, continue to work hard to lead his squad. And he's like, man, I should take a picture of this moment to remind us what good leadership looks like. His guys brought him food, even though he was hard on them, and because they cared about him. And then I think it was the next day that he dies from that. And I asked Trent later on, like, now that you've seen, Jason do this ultimate sacrifice, what have you learned from it? He's like, I take that picture now. I stop, I slow down, and I say, this is a good leadership moment. I need to capture these for myself to use as teaching points. He's still a Marine. He's still he's a colonel now. And those are the moments, when someone like Flo or someone like Leroy, when they take that next step and they lead. And Corporal Dunham, he passes away. He literally has 2 Marines standing next to him, and they're both alive today because of that. And I'll tell you right now, those guys lived their lives differently because of the leadership example that they were given, and it's not an easy load to bear for them specifically because it came through tragedy. But if you're able to give that example, to slow down, to pick your head up, all those things, man, that we've talked about, that's where good leadership is loving and caring for one another while you accomplish the mission.
Beautifully said. Loving and caring for each other as you accomplish the mission.
Tell us really quickly about the charity, and then we'll wrap this thing.
Warrior Rising is a 501c3 veteran service organization, a nonprofit. We help veterans in the most altruistic way we know how. We help them and their immediate family members start or accelerate their own businesses. And so we've been in business as a nonprofit for 5 years. Last year, we helped 1,016 veterans start businesses. This year, I think we're going to get closer to 2,000.
Wow.
Which is awesome, especially during COVID. We raised almost $1 million last year alone. We're hoping to raise that much this year. It's been very difficult getting donations from people, certainly because of the atmosphere and situation right now. But if you want to learn more about Warrior Rising, go to warriorrising.org. If you want to become a vetrepreneur, a veteran entrepreneur, apply on our website. If you want to help out in any capacity, as a volunteer, as a mentor, as a representative, we'd love to have you. We definitely have an unbelievable team, unbelievable staff doing great things. And I'm really proud of Warrior Rising.
Hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. Let's do another one of these, and let's really keep diving into the leadership aspect of stuff, because your experience and your way of telling it, it's just fantastic. I love it.
Oh, man, my pleasure. Seriously, I appreciate the comments, too. I'm a sucker for compliments. So thank you again for having me on the show. It's been an honor. It's been a lot of fun, and I'd love to come back.